Okay, guys, we're going to finish Junie B, Boss of Lunch today, all right? So we left off and Mrs. Gutzman was teaching her 3 jobs. And so far we know one of her jobs is to stack the napkins and the other job is to clean up small messes, okay? All right. Well, sponges are another job I'm good at, Mrs. Gutzman, I said. One time in kindergarten, I threw sponges in my toilet and I didn't even miss the pot. Hardly. Mrs. Gutzman's face went pale. Oh, she said, oh my. After that, she sounded a little bit worried. Well, there's one more job I do need to tell you about. Do you see that door over there? That's where the children come into the kitchen to get their lunches. Yep, I see it, I said. Well, when you're not busy with your other jobs, you're going to be our lunch greeter. Do you know what a greeter is, Junie B? A greeter smiles at people and says hello. Do you think you could do that? This time, I didn't answer right away because that job made my stomach feel jumpy inside. Yeah, but there's children who I don't even know at this school, Mrs. Gutzman. Some of them are big kids, and big kids are not my favorite size. Mrs. Gutzman did a chuckle. Don't worry, Junie B. There are really nice big kids at this school. Just give it a try, please. I shrugged my shoulders, kind of weakish. Maybe, I said. Mrs. Gutzman gave me a pat. That's the spirit, she said. Now there's just one other thing we need to talk about before we get started. Then guess what? She reached under the counter and she gave me another pair of mitts. I quick held up my hands for her to see. I'm already wearing mitts, Mrs. Gutzman. See them? You already gave them to me yesterday. I know, but these are brand new ones, Junie B. Around here we change them often. That's how we keep from spreading germs. We're constantly washing our hands and changing our mitts. I scratched my head. No kidding? I said, really? You mean I'm supposed to wash my hands plus wear mitts? My, that's a lot of hygiene, isn't it? Mrs. Gutzman did a frown and then she took me to the sink and I washed my hands real good. When they were dry, she put the new mitts on me. Whoa, these are the cleanest hands I ever even saw, I said. After that, I skipped back to the counter and began stacking the napkins, and then the kitchen started getting smells in it. I sniffed the air. The smells were not delicious. P.U., I said kind of quiet. Mrs. Gutzman looked over at me. I held my nose. I smell stink, I said. Mrs. Gutzman did not look happy. Plugging your nose is not sanitary, Junie B. Jones. You have to change your gloves again. I kept on holding my nose. But if I let go of my nose, the stink is going to get in my nostrils. And that smell is not delightful. Mrs. Gutzman looked annoyed at me. What you are smelling is our lunch today, Junie B. We're making tuna noodle casserole. We're serving it with carrots and peas. I made a sick face. Ew, I said. I hate peas. Good thing I brought my own lunch today, huh, Mrs. Gutzman? At least I get a decent meal. Mrs. Gutzman all of a sudden looked grumpy. She came over and changed my mitts, and then I started stacking more napkins, and I just tried to breathe through my mouth. Chapter 8 is called Lunchtime. Being a helper is not a breeze. After the lunch bell rang, big kids started coming into the kitchen. 2 of them pointed at my hairnet. They called me the name of a freakazoid. I felt crumbling inside. Now I'm not going to greet you, I said real quiet. Then I tattletaled to Mrs. Gutzman and she grouched at those boys. Plus, also, she said I didn't have to greet people anymore. Instead, she said I could sponge the counter. I hurried over there my fastest and I sponged until the big kids were gone. Then I looked out the door again and guess what? It was my friends from room 1. I saw Herb and Lenny and Jose and Shirley and Roger, and they were all at the counter with their trays. I ran over there speedy quick. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Look at me. See me working in here? I'm being a helper. See? I said. They all smiled and waved. Hi, Junie B. Hi, they said. I skipped around in a circle. See my outfit? I'm a real professional lunch maker. I look just like Mrs. Gutzman. I showed him my sponge. And look at this. I even have equipment. After that, I ran back to the sink and I showed them how I wiped down the counter. Does everyone see me over here? I am the boss of this whole entire area. Then I zoomed to the napkins. Plus, also, I'm the boss of the napkins. Do you see how I stack them? If I keep up the good work, someday I will be the boss of this whole operation probably. Just then, May came in the door and did a mean laugh. And there she is, showing them all how cool she is. You're not a real lunch maker, Junie B. Jones. They're just letting you pretend. Don't you know that? Then I felt steamy mad inside. I am sick and tired of that girl. I stamped my foot. Yes, I am too a real lunch maker. Can't you even see my outfit, May? If I'm not a real lunch maker, then how come I'm wearing mitts and a hairnet? Huh? May didn't answer. I'll tell you why, sister, I yelled. I'm keeping my hair and germs out of the tuna noodle stinkle. That's why. Behind me, I heard Mrs. Gutzman groan. I turned around to see her. Her face looked sickish. I turned back to room 1. Their faces looked sickish, too. One by one, all of them put their lunch trays back. I don't really feel that hungry anymore, Herb said. Me neither, said Jose. I had a big breakfast. Then, very slow, all the children backed out of the kitchen. Look at them plugging their noses, too. I watched them from the door. They backed all the way to our lunch table. Mr. Scary was waiting for them there. He talked to them for a minute, and then he came into the kitchen and talked to Mrs. Gutzman. They whispered to each other for a real long time. Also, they kept looking at me, and they wouldn't stop. My head got drops of sweat on it. I wiped it off with my sponge. After that, Mrs. Gutzman closed her eyes again. Then she walked to me very nice. She took away my sponge, and she said my job was done. Okay, chapter 9 is the last one, and it is called Baloney. Dear first grade journal, room 1 is still mad at me about Friday. After we went back to our classroom, Mrs. Gutzman brought us bologna sandwiches for the children who didn't eat. They were not a hit. I sat at my desk and ate out of my new lunchbox. I had a delicious peanut butter and jelly sandwich because brought lunch is better than bought lunch. And that's not my fault. Some of the children watched me eat, and they made growly faces at me. Today, Herbert is my only friend. Also, Lenny and Jose, they're being reasonable. I wish Friday never happened. From Junie B, first grader. I peeked my eyes at the clock. It was almost 2:15. Just one more hour before I could go home. I tried to make the clock go faster with my eyes, but it didn't work that good. Just then there was a knock on our door and Mr. Scary answered it. Well, hello, he said. Hello yourself, said a friendly voice. It was Mrs. Gutzman. She walked into the room with 2 boxes in her arms. My heart pounded and pounded to see her, because what if she came to scold me? I slumped way down in my seat so she couldn't see me. She set the boxes on Mr. Scary's desk and looked all around the room. I just kept slumping in my seat even further. But too bad for me, because Blabbermouth May pointed at me. Mrs. Gutzman, she hollered. Junie Jones is trying to hide from you. She's sliding down in her chair so you can't see her, but I'm keeping track of her movements. After that, I slid all the way to the floor under my desk. I curled into a ball and I hid my head. Pretty soon, I heard feet walking to my desk. I'm getting used to that sound. The feet stopped next to my chair. I opened up one eye and peeked out. I saw the bottom of Mrs. Gutzman's white apron. Junie B, why are you sitting on the floor? I didn't move any muscles. 'Cause maybe she would just go away? Junie B, I brought something for your class. Don't you want to see what it is? I shook my head real fast. No thank you, I said. I don't want to see it. You could just be on your way now, please. I opened my other eye and looked at her feet. She just kept on standing there. All of a sudden, I heard a loud groan. And what do you know? That woman squatted down right next to me. I was shocked to see her. Mrs. Gutzman, what are you doing down here? Mrs. Gutzman did not look comfortable. Please, Junie B, I need your help. I brought cookies for your class, but there's no one up there to help me pass them out. I rolled my eyes way in the back of my head, because I know that was not even the truth. Yes, there is, Mrs. Gutzman. There's lots of people to help you. She shook her head. No, you don't understand. Then she reached into her pocket and she pulled out a pair of plastic mitts. I need a real helper, Junie B. Someone with experience? Mrs. Gutzman smiled. Please, if we don't stand soon, I'm going to fall right on my keister and you'll never get me up. I did a teensy smile because that was a little joke, I believe. Finally, I crawled out from under my desk and I helped Mrs. Gutzman stand up. I guess I'll help you pass out cookies, I said. But some of these children are mad at me, you know. Mrs. Gutzman held my hand. Well, we'll fix that, she said. Then me and her walked to the front of the room together and Mrs. Gutzman showed everyone the cookies. Sugar cookies, shouted the children. Thanks, Mrs. Gutzman, thank you. Mrs. Gutzman put her hand on my shoulder. Don't thank me. Junie B. Jones is the one who reminded me to pay you a visit this year. She's the one you need to thank. For a second, no one said anything. Then, all of a sudden, Herb hollered out, Thanks, Junie B. Jones! And then all the other children hollered out, Thank you, too. I grinned real big, because those words felt happy in my ears. After that, I hurried back to the sink and I washed my hands and I put on my mitts and ran back. Mrs. Gutzman gave me a thumbs up. Ready to go, helper? Yep, ready to go, I said back. Then both of us passed out all the cookies together, and I did a perfect job. So here's what I'm thinking. Someday, I won't be the boss of lunch after all. I'll just be the boss of cookies instead, because the boss of cookies is the most delicious job I ever heard of. Plus, also, I will get to make all the cookie rules, and I have already thought of rule number 1. Do you hear Champ interrupting me reading right now? He sees some neighbors outside. Hey, Champ, stop it. You're interrupting my story. All right, ready? Rule number 1. The boss of cookies gets to have 5 sugar cookies to herself. P.S. Never eat them in front of the children, because that would be rude. P.S. again. Sometimes she can even eat 6. Ha! The end. And that is it. All right, guys. So next week, we will start the next book, which I don't even know which one that is. And Champ says, goodbye, first graders. Hey, Champ. Bye, guys. Have a good weekend.